As ever, Lin Dunn has a lot to say about the Indiana Fever, the general manager, and frankly, someone who is always a pleasure to talk to about all things women's basketball and beyond. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. Delighted to be back with you after my time off last week. And we are catching up on a lot going on in the world of women's basketball. Of course, Team USA playing in Paris right now. The WNBA just completed a fantastically interesting all-star weekend. So much to get to, but I want to focus on the Indiana Fever if I can. And again, Lin Dunn, who has been on this program many times, is, and forgive me saying so, as important to the game as anyone uh, I can think of in the history of this sport. And so her perspective on what is happening, on what she's building in Indiana with the Fever is fascinating to me. But of course, we'll talk about the larger world of women's basketball as well, because there is so much going on. And Lynn, I want to start. I was led to understand that when your Fever began 2-9, the season was over. And so I kind of tuned out. Have you guys played any games since then? Has anything happened?
Uh, well, Howard, before I respond to that, let me make sure I give kudos to Phoenix. They did an outstanding job with that all-star event. Matt and all of his people. I didn't get to go because I had COVID, of course, and I got stuck at home, but I watched everything on TV, and just congratulations to them for doing a great job.
It's
Now, to your
awesome.
question,
And we're glad you're on the mend.
I'm on the
That's
mend,
excellent
but
as
I'm on
well.
the tail end of COVID. If anybody's had COVID, they know what that is. So
Yeah.
I'm almost cured. But your question, yes, the league dealt us a really, really difficult hand, and I get it. They anticipated that Caitlin Clark would be part of our team from the get-go, from way back. I think they knew before anybody knew that she was coming out, and that it was going to create an enormous amount of attention. And so they dealt us just a really tough schedule. And I think early on, when we're playing Connecticut twice, New York twice, the Vegas twice, it's like, what in the world is going on? And so, but we never panicked. And I give our players and our coaches, everyone, a great deal of credit, because we were going through a tough period of time. It was a lot of adversity, playing the best teams in the league and playing many of them on the road, and back to backs. We've already finished. We finished our back to backs, I don't know, the first month of the season. So nothing easy about our schedule. Tremendous adversity, and so we had to fight our way through that. And I saw us continue to get better. I saw us not get discouraged. I saw the coaches go to work. I saw the players continue to get better. We also had 5 new players. We had 2 rookies, and then we had 3 free agents. So those 5 new players are trying to, blend in, figure out their roles, figure out how everything's going to work together. And so that made it even more challenging as we went along. But I have now we go from 2-9, and now we're 11 and 15 at the break. We're currently sitting 7th in the standings, and so we're exactly where we wanted to be at the break, even though we've played the toughest schedule in the league with one of the youngest teams. So I give a lot of grace and a lot of credit to Christy and her staff, to the young players, to Caitlin Clark and her adjustment, to Aliyah Boston's adjustment of her second year after. Everybody knows when you come back from being rookie of the year, everybody's going to be, focused on you. So kudos to those 2. Kudos to Kelsey Mitchell, who once again was a all-star. So I think we've shown progress. I think we're on the right path, and I'm excited about the direction that we're going.
It's interesting to me, the way in which you break it down is similar to the way I think of it as well. And obviously, joking aside, I had the chance to see you guys at that low point. You get, uh, lose badly to New York, 104-68, to drop to 2-9 during a period of time that we all knew going in was going to be challenged for anyone. 11 games in 20 days. We went back, we did a study over at the Next. No one had been through that difficult a schedule just from a timing perspective before you even get into who you guys played in 21 years in the league, dating back to 2003. So that was historically challenging. But the way I thought of it at the time and the way it has kind of played out since is you now have the hardest part of your season over at a time where you were going to be arguably your worst. The first 11 games of Caitlin Clark's career, the first 11 games, like you said, of incorporating Caitlin along with a number of other new players. Katie Lou Samuelson coming off of time away for having a baby. We had Katie Lou on the program. So it's not a surprise to see that there's a jump. What is significant to me, and what I want to kind of dive into a little more, is what this next 15 games has looked like since, because you talked about 11 and 15, but in my mind, it's almost more like, well, 9 and 6, since the 2-9. This is a period of time, 15 games, you're starting to get into some statistically significant numbers. And it's not just 9 wins. It's the fact that over that 15-game period, you are 5th in net rating, or excuse me, 6th in net rating during that period of time in the league. The only teams ahead of you are Minnesota, Connecticut, Las Vegas, Seattle, New York, and you've beaten several of those teams over the course of that 15-game span. Not to suggest that these last 15 games are your ceiling, more like feels like a new floor. And so 2 parts to that. Number one, when you look at what Caitlin has done during that period of time, up to 35% from 3, a reason to think obviously that'll go up even more. She's averaging 18.2 points per game, shooting 44% from the field overall, almost 10 assists, 9.5 assists per game. The turnovers are coming down as well. That's almost to me as important as Aliyah Boston during that period of time. This 15-game span is shooting 60% from the field, 40% from 3, 17.1 points per game, 10.3 rebounds per game, and by the way, 2.9 assists as essentially a secondary facilitator out of the post. There are a lot of important players on this team, including obviously the all-star Kelsey Mitchell, but seeing your 2 number 1 overall picks do what they've done, how much has that changed not only what the floor is here over these last 15 games, but what you can expect the ceiling to be over the remainder of the regular season and into the playoffs?
Mm-hmm. Well, Howard, you are the stat man. You've got the information. You've definitely done your research, and I love the statistics, the data that you've just given us, because it's impressive. It's very impressive, and I think, how did we go from struggling early to where we are today with those statistics? And it takes time. People don't understand that growth takes time, and so over a period of time, Caitlin Clark had to adjust to the physicality of the league. She had to adjust that she was going to be guarded every night by everybody's number 1 toughest defender. I mean, look who's guarded her: Copper, Benijah Laney, Carrington. Whoever your toppest guard, defensive guard is, they're going to be all over Clark from the get-go, not to mention the traps and the double teams and the switches. And so it was a learning curve for her. And I am very impressed with how she grew through that period of time and became very mentally and physically tough with the things that were thrown at her. And then during that period of time, she and Boston are learning how to play together. And then also, Kelsey Mitchell is learning how to benefit from the fact that Caitlin now has the number 1 defender on her, and the number 2 or 3 defender is on her instead of the number 1. And so that's creating opportunities for her to get open that she hasn't had a lot of in the past. And so it's just a growth process that takes time and that takes patience. And so I think where we are right now is exactly the type goals that we had. It was get better. Can we get better from the beginning of the season to the Olympic break? Can we compete every night, no matter who we're playing, whether they're more talented than we are, whether they're bigger, stronger? Can we compete? And then can we fight as we go along for a playoff berth? That's what this team's trying to do. We're trying. 3 years ago, we were the last in the league, and then we were next to last in the league, and now last year we were 10th, and now we're trying to get to 6, 7, 8. So it's a process that can only happen through free agency, drafts, or trades. Well, when you're us and you spend 3 years out of our building, it's tough with free agency. You know, people say, well, why haven't you secured better free agents? Well, we didn't have a building. We're playing in the barn at the state fair, or we're playing, who knows where. And so that's difficult. Now we're past that. Now we're in our beautiful facility, our brand new locker room. We have something unique that other teams do not have. Everything is right there in that facility. We have access to 4 courts, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. So we're on a plan here to get back into playoffs, and then and eventually be challenging back for championships, just like we did when we had Tamika Catchings. Are we still recovering from losing her? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. You can't lose a player like her and it not have a huge impact on you. No. But I like where we are. I like the growth of the players. I like the fact that we've got 4 players in double figures. The balance of this team, the growth of this team, and we're still really, really young.
There's so much upside there. I want to get into, because again, both the recruiting free agency, and we can't just gloss over Kelsey Mitchell. I want to spend a little time on her too in segment 2. We're back with much more with Lin Dunn of the Indiana Fever right after this. But first, Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by Game Time. And as Lynn knows, as many of you know, I have a basketball-obsessed daughter in Juliet, and she loves the game, but she's very particular about where she sits, what her view is. Again, what do I do when I'm not covering the sport is I'm taking my daughter to make sure that we're watching as well, because it is to see the joy in her as she watches is key. Well, she also, as a result, wants to make sure she knows not just where we're sitting, but what her view is from those seats. And that's where the Game Time app comes in and is so helpful. Game Time gives you the opportunity not just to secure tickets. Sometimes last minute you can get really good deals through the Game Time app, but also you have a 360 view of seeing what there is to see. I will tell you guys that the Indiana Fever are a personal favorite of Juliet's when it comes to watching. She makes sure that she checks them out as well, and often can do so through Game Time. So how do you do it? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Do it like Juliet does it. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Back here with Lin Dunn of the Indiana Fever. And just before we get into that sort of bigger picture, because we've learned some things about where the league is going, and it's going to absolutely dictate how and the ways in which teams are built over the next few years. But Kelsey Mitchell, again, first 11 games, she's coming off of an ankle injury. We didn't even talk about that, right? 5 new players, but Kelsey misses training camp, essentially, as coming in and learning how to do it on the fly. Shot 37.8% from the field, 31.8% from three-point range, first 11 games. Last 15 games, she is essentially a 50-40-80 player, shooting 49.3% from the field, if memory serves. I think just over 40% from 3 and 84 from the line. Getting these opportunities, and you and I, from her Big Ten days, we've seen her for a long time in terms of developing into the type of player that she has become for you. Is this the peak role for Kelsey Mitchell, getting these opportunities, exploiting these matchups? Is there even a next level that you think she's going to reach as she gets more comfortable with it?
I think what we've seen Kelsey do is show that she's one of the top 2 guards in this league. You know, she's a combo in that she can slide back and forth. If you need her to bring the ball down the floor, she can. But she is a shooting, scoring two guard. She's getting to the rim. She's got a nice pull up. She's got a floater. She's finishing at the rim. And then if you give her a step, she's going to knock down a three. So I think her versatility now is really at an all-time high. And like I said, she's benefiting by having Clark on one side of her, Boston down low, Nalissa Smith stepping up and being in double figures. And so now we're harder to guard because we've got more bullets in our gun. We've got, you know, who are you going to stop? Who are you going to trap? Who are you going to double team? You know, who are you going to put your best defender on? And so I think Kelsey's benefiting from all of that. And she's in elite fitness. I don't know if y'all have noticed or not, but she's as fit as she's ever been. So I give her credit there. She was always quick as lightning. Now she's even more quicker than lightning. And so she's, you know, she's getting to the rim and she's getting by people and she's scoring in transition. And so we're just really pleased where she is with her game today.
It's funny to see, you know, coming out of that 11-20 start, she had a big smile on her face. She was just ready to keep going. It was almost like now the work begins. And there was no dispirited element to the way in which at least publicly, the way in which the team rebounded from that type of start. And, you know, we've seen teams recover from that. I remember the Charlotte Sting back in 2001 started 1-10, ended up making the WNBA finals. And so before we get into sort of what there is in 25 and beyond, because it's really obviously an exciting moment moving forward for Indiana, I just want to go back to what I was mentioning in segment one, which is to say that you look inside the numbers and you guys are at the level or near the level of the best teams in this league now over a 15-game span. You come back from an Olympic break, and from the Olympic break, Caitlin Clark is going to have had the first time to breathe in a very long time. And so those legs are going to be fresher coming out of this Olympic break. This is a team that has figured some things out. Again, like you said, enormous credit to what Christy Sides and the coaching staff have been doing, you know, just keeping people together through adversity, as you know, is a real challenge. And so my belief coming in, and this was my hot take coming into the season, was that this is a team that's going to be better, faster than I think some people were assuming. I thought this was a team that had a chance not just to make the playoffs, but make some noise in the playoffs. As you look at this overall landscape where there's no obvious team that can't be beat. New York is number one, but you guys have beaten New York. You know, this is a year that feels more wide open than the WNBA has felt in a long time. I wonder whether you see it that way. And I'm not looking to sort of get you on for any sort of predictions or guarantees, but more like, does it feel like there's a chance to get a little ahead of where you thought you'd be at the start of the season?
I think you're right, Howard. I think the real question was, how was Caitlin Clark going to adapt as a rookie to the next level? How was she going to be as a pro? Was she going to be able to score? Was she going to be able to pass? Was she going to be able to lead a team just like she did Iowa? Was she going to be able to do that as a rookie? Was she strong enough? Was she physically tough enough? Was she mentally tough enough? And so I think we've seen that. We've seen her go from a baby rookie to a grown-up rookie mid-season here and doing some things that I don't think anybody thought she was able to do. And I think that may have been why they left her off the Olympic team, that they didn't think she was ready. And I think now as we see her, we see that she's more than ready, and then she's more than adapted to what's been thrown at her. And so I think that's going to be a key, because she makes everybody better. She makes Aliyah better when they work together in the pick and roll, the pick and pop, the pick and whatever action they're doing that's so beautiful. And she makes Kelsey better. She makes everybody better. And so that's the direction we go now. Okay, how do we continue to grow? And how do we get better in two areas that I think we need to grow in? And that's defensively, we need to continue to get better. We still need to grow our knowledge of our special situations. Let's make sure that we're really functioning at a high level in all those areas. So special situation and defense would be the two areas I'd say we've really got to grow over the break.
It's interesting. You talk about how much she makes everyone better. And during that 15 game span, you guys are fourth in the lead in true shooting percentage. And yes, a lot of that is her, but a lot of that is not her. The last 6 games in particular, it kind of blows your mind. And you talked about the Olympic team. And I know Dawn Staley had some comments recently. And it is worth noting, by the way, that everyone should be aware the committee ultimately decides this. I feel like Cheryl Reeve has gotten a lot of blowback over this. She's ultimately the coach, is the committee that decides who makes that decision. So just something worth for the record. And Dawn Staley, being a member of that committee, talked about that maybe there'd be a different conversation. And it's hard to say otherwise when somebody over her final 6 games heading into the break, 38.2 minutes per game, 20.3 points per game, 12.5 assists. It wasn't just that 19 in the final game that was the WNBA single game record, but she had 5 of 6 games in double digit assists as well. So you're seeing her do things we haven't really seen players do, but specifically, we haven't seen rookies do anything like it. And so when somebody comes in, to your point, and is producing at not a veteran level, but at a level that we haven't seen, it changes, in my mind, the thinking process. You're seventh in the WNBA right now, but you just start to look at what those first round matchups look like. And these are teams you've been able to play well against, and nobody's going to want to face your team coming in. So we're going to talk more about what that will look like 2025 and beyond as well. Back with Lin Dunn right after this. But first, so I'm back here in segment 3 with Lin Dunn of the Indiana Fever. And so, Lin, a couple of parts to this, okay? And just to sort of give the context for our audience so they know, the WNBA is going to make significantly more in a new media rights deal coming up. It is expected, although there's been some differing language recently that the players are expecting to opt out of the current collective bargaining agreement. Opting out at the end of 2024 would set up an end to it at the end of 2025 and a negotiation that comes with that. And then you add the third element of this is expansion coming. And so suddenly teams that are deep, the way the Fever are, for instance, are going to potentially face some differing consequences to that, negative consequences, because an expansion draft, although we don't have the rules yet, which is a little weird. It's July. It's almost August. Probably ought to know what the rules are for who you're protecting, but that should be coming up before the end of the year, according to Kathy Engelbert, who spoke about it last week in Phoenix. And so I say all that to provide the following. How much extra you've got now, the building of the practice facility, the home, the chance, the opportunity to be playing. People understand sort of what the experience of playing in Indiana is going to be. The money is going to be the money, and people are going to be relatively flat in how they're able to do that because of the salary cap, as at least in the above board fashion. So then the question becomes, how much does a run in the playoffs help you guys to be able to make a case to players this offseason and notably next offseason about where you guys are going?
Well, I think that's the bottom line. Players want to win. Players want to play for a championship. Players want to be in the playoffs. And so when you're going out in free agency, you have to sell these players on, if you come here, here's what's going to happen. We're not only going to get better, we're not only going to compete, we're going to be in the playoffs. We're going to be 6, 7, 8. Next year, we're going to be 4, 5, and 6. And then the next thing we're doing is we're challenging for championships. And so you have to sell these players on this plan, and you have to have the resources, you have to have the facilities, you have to have the support, your ownership has to be all in. And I think we're right in line with all the teams that are winning championships with what we can do for our players. We just have to have the opportunity to show them this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. And so it's an exciting time. Do you want to play with Aliyah Boston? Do you want to play with Caitlin Clark? And let's be honest, Howard, the performance that she put on at the All-Star game versus our Olympic team, didn't that send a message how skilled and how talented and how tough she is? My goodness gracious. Not only is she out there on the court as a rookie, but she's playing against our Olympic team, the best in the world. And what does she have? 10 assists? And trust me, they're not allowing those assists if they can help it.
No, that, and again, that's the All-Star game is always a fun thing. You get to see talented all together. But what I love is when the game is between the WNBA All-Stars who are not on the Olympic team and the Olympic team. That's a game. That's a game. Defense is played. People are working hard to win it. And it was at another level. And Caitlin rose to the occasion, as we have continued to see her do as well. I do think, and just to touch on the point that you made, defensively as well during this period of time. I know I keep going back to the 15 game span, but I think it's really significant. To me, it's like after you went through the fire, right? And during that 15 game span, you guys are ninth in defensive rating and up significantly, about 5 points better per 100 possessions than you were during the opening part of the season. But do you have in your mind where defensively this team needs to be to get to the level you want to be at by the end of the season?
I think in all of the data, the statistics that matter, I think it has to be in the top 8. Do you know what I'm saying? If you want to be in the playoffs, then your data has to indicate that you're performing at that level. And so if we're 9th, we need to be 7th. If we're 6th, we need to be 4th. So, how do we look at those statistics and that data and say, okay, how do we go up 2 points, or how do we go up 2 standings? And so in my mind, our opponents need to score 5 less points a game. There's not any doubt in my mind. And we need to execute at a higher level with our inline, sideline, after timeouts, after free throws, our special situations, our end of quarter. We needed to be better there. And so that's how we score more points, and that's how we stop teams from scoring as many points. We need our defensive transition needs to go up a notch or 2. We're giving up too many transition scores. So there's a plan there. And the great thing about Christy is she and her staff are very coachable. They're open to suggestions. They're open to making a plan. Okay, here's what we have to do to get better, and here's how we have to do it. And I love that about this young staff.
And I'm glad you mentioned Christy, because I want to go back to that was a trial by public fire, what she's been going through. And it continues, right? There's more attention than there's ever been before. Just take us behind the scenes if you can, because I know you a long time and you hate to lose, but you have always been preaching patience about this team throughout. What are those conversations like with Christy, who again, another person who hates to lose, but understood the assignment, right? Take me through those conversations and how you guys kind of got through that to where you are now.
Well, I think first and foremost, I expected an enormous fan. I expected sellouts, everything that's happened. I expected Caitlin Clark to be great early. Yeah. I was one of the few people that said, hey, she's going to be fine. She's going to be fine. She's going to do a lot of the things that she did at Iowa. She's going to do them in her rookie year. What I didn't expect, though, was probably the mean-spirited vitriol postings that I saw on social media. And I'm not on all of those, all of them. I'm on just a few, to promote the fever. But I was really taken aback with some of the harsh comments that I've seen towards coaches, towards players. Even when the Olympic Committee didn't select her and how they were attacked, that's been the biggest surprise for me, that there's been this kind of attacking, mean-spirited posting towards everybody, and so I don't like it. I don't think it's appropriate. That's not my style. And so I think the coaches, the players, I know on our team had to adjust to that. They were taken aback by, wow, ooh, look at that harsh commenter. And so we had to block out the noise, and we had to talk about, you have to block out the noise. What's happening on the outside does not matter. especially by people that post things that you don't even know them. If you don't know that person, then it has no value. Only listen to people that you trust, that you love, that you care about. And so all that other noise has got to be blocked out. And it's easy to say that. But sometimes it's hard because it's surprising that's happening. And so that was part of the process. Don't pay any attention to that. Block it out. Do you know who that person is? Nope. Well, then they don't matter. And so that's a real tricky thing to do. And I think our coaches and our players had to learn to block out any of the negative crap. Just block it out. Don't pay attention to it. It does not matter. And so that's part of the journey with getting more tough-skinned, just not losing focus, not letting any of that bother me. Don't worry about what people say if their opinion doesn't matter. Yeah. And so I think they've done a good job with that, and it hadn't been easy adapting to that. No, no one wants to pick up a iPad or a phone and be attacked, or not even know the person. So we had to get past that. We had to block that out. We had to move forward. We had to be resilient. We had to persevere. Nobody likes losing. Okay. But losing is an opportunity to get better. If you lost, figure out why you lost and figure out how do you fix it. That's just my philosophy.
Well, the philosophy has been working as we've gotten into in detail here. And as we suspected, as we talked about beforehand, we run out of time before we run out of topics. But oh man, so it means we got to have you back soon, which is no sacrifice for me or for the listeners as well. Lin Dunn, appreciate your time very much. To our listeners, thank you for making us your first listen every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, continuing to talk about all that is going on in the world of women's basketball. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful day.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.